My story really began on an evening when something as simple as a forgotten phone call cut my life in half. My daughter accidentally left her cell line open, and through that tiny speaker, I heard a sentence that cracked something deep inside me. He needs to move into a care facility. He's becoming dead weight. I did not interrupt. I did not even breathe. But in that moment, something inside me shifted for good. Not long after that call, I made a decision people my age are not usually accused of making lightly. I sold my place here in Lakeside, Wisconsin for $890,000. When my daughter and her husband got home from their business trip, smiling, laughing, rolling their luggage up the sidewalk, they never expected to find the locks changed. Their keys did not even turn. On the doorstep was a note waiting for them. I was not there to see their faces twist as they read it, but the screaming that followed told me enough. That moment made one thing perfectly clear. They were not going to let this go quietly, and this was only the start. The whole mess had started earlier that week. I was sitting at my small kitchen table, scraping up the last bit of the meatloaf I had made, Ellen's recipe. No matter what I tried, it never tasted the way it did when she made it. The phone rang just as I set my fork down. I checked the caller ID and felt a little smile tug at me. "Caitlin, Dad, how are you doing today?" she asked. Her voice had that familiar softness to it, the kind that used to make my chest ache with equal parts comfort and loneliness. I eased myself into Ellen's old recliner, the one she used to curl up in every evening with a book. The leather had gone smooth and warm from all those years. "Oh, you know me, kiddo. I just finished dinner and figured I would put the news on in a bit." I did not mention the leftovers were from 3 days ago, or that I had been staring at Ellen's picture on the mantel long before the phone rang. "Are you eating enough? You know you can order groceries through that app I showed you, right?" "I am eating fine," I said, trying to keep my tone light. Although I had a small scare yesterday, left the burner on under the coffee pot. Luckily, I smelled it starting to burn from the living room. She went quiet, and I could practically see her frown. She had inherited that same little crease between her eyebrows from her mother. "Dad, maybe we should talk about having someone check in on you a little more often. Brandon thinks—" "I am all right, sweetheart, really." I cut her off as gently as I could. "How is the business trip going? You are still in San Diego, right?" "Yes," she replied. "The conference wraps up tomorrow. Brandon has been taking most of the client meetings while I sit through these endless talks about digital branding strategies." She laughed, though it had a strained sound to it. "Anyway, Dad, I should get going. We have dinner plans with some investors tonight." "Of course. I love you." "Love you too, Dad. Take care, okay?" She hung up, but only on her end. A second later, I heard muffled rustling, like her phone had slipped into her purse. I was just about to end the call from my side when voices filtered through, faint but unmistakable. "Brandon, do you see how he is slipping?" That was my daughter's voice, stripped of warmth. "He left a burner on yesterday. What if he burns the place down?" My hand froze. A cold pulse moved through my chest, like someone had cracked open a window in midwinter. "It is time to think seriously about getting him into a facility," Brandon said. His tone was cool, businesslike. "He is becoming a responsibility we cannot keep juggling. He is a good guy, but he cannot live by himself anymore." "The house could go for close to $1 million now," Caitlin added, her voice turning sharp with calculation. "Property values in this area are crazy. We could easily get 900,000, maybe more." "Exactly," he replied. "We sell it, put him somewhere decent but not too pricey, and then we can finally put in an offer on that place in Boulder. You know, the one with the overlook?" My daughter laughed. "God, Brandon, you should have seen him tonight. He was so grateful just to hear my voice. He has no idea what we are working on." "The longer we wait, the harder it will be," Brandon said. "We should move while he still trusts us completely." The phone slipped from my hands and clattered to the hardwood floor. Floorboards Ellen and I had installed together almost 25 years ago. Every plank had been cut with my own hands. Every nail hammered while the two of us talked about how this home was going to be our family's legacy. Silence wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I stared at Ellen's picture on the side table. Her eyes seemed to follow mine, as if she already knew what I had just learned. Was she disappointed? Warning me? Or was it simply that unspoken understanding of someone who had already crossed into the next world? The grandfather clock in the hall, her anniversary gift from 15 years back, kept ticking in, the growing quiet. Outside, spring crickets had begun their nightly song in the garden she planted, and that I still tended, even now. Something cold settled inside me. It replaced every warm feeling I had felt just moments earlier while talking to my daughter. My hands, worn from decades of carpentry and construction work, tightened slowly into fists. They thought I was a burden. They thought I was confused. They were making plans for my life and for my death, without even telling me. They were already counting the money, envisioning their new home, imagining a future built on my grave. But I was not gone yet, and I was not nearly as helpless as they believed. I do not know how long I sat there in the dark with Ellen's face staring back at me from that silver frame. The house felt different, almost like the walls themselves had heard the betrayal and were holding their breath. When I finally stood, my legs trembled as if the room had changed shape around me. I finally pushed myself upright and switched on the lamp beside the recliner. Warm light spilled across the living room, the room Ellen and I had pieced together over a lifetime of saving, choosing, and compromising. The soft gold glow fell over the deep green sofa, where my daughter, Caitlin, used to spend her afternoons spread out with textbooks, legs tucked under a blanket Ellen had crocheted. My gaze settled on the oak coffee table I had built in the garage, sanding it smooth while she colored at my feet, her little sneakers tapping against the concrete. I made my way into the kitchen and pulled open the drawer where I kept the old paperwork I could never bring myself to throw out. My hand found the folder almost instinctively. 20 years of financial history lived in that worn manila envelope. Things Ellen always insisted we save because, as she liked to say, you never know when life is going to ask for a receipt. The stack began with tuition payments for the University of Minnesota, $48,000 across 4 long years. I could still feel the grit of those double-shift days, coming home with concrete dust stuck to my eyebrows and plaster dried into the creases of my hands. Ellen would meet me at the door with a mug of strong coffee, then rub my shoulders while I sat at this same kitchen table, squinting at bills under a dim overhead light. "Ray," she had murmured one night, watching me punch numbers into my old calculator, "you are working yourself into the ground." "She deserves the chance we never had," I told her. "She is smart enough to do anything she wants." Ellen kissed the top of my head gently. "Just make sure you do not give her so much that she forgets to appreciate any of it." Looking back now, I should have listened. God help me, I should have listened. I thumbed through more papers, receipts from Caitlin's wedding. $32,000 for one shimmering day. I had told her we could handle 5, maybe 8,000 if we squeezed every corner tight. But she cried, real tears, about wanting her dream ceremony. And I caved. I spent 6 straight months working Saturdays and Sundays, installing floors for a contractor who paid in cash. "Dad, you are the best father anyone could ever have," she whispered during our dance, her cheek pressed to my shoulder and her dress brushing my rented tux. I will never forget this. But she had forgotten. She had forgotten who co-signed the loan for her first car when her credit was too thin. She had forgotten who called in favors to help her land that marketing job after nearly a year of unemployment. Next in the folder came the bank statements from 2 years back, right after Brandon lost his financial analyst job, something they never fully explained to me. They said they needed a place to stay for a little while, just until he found new work. I never charged them rent. I covered the bigger grocery bills, the higher electricity costs. I let myself believe I was helping my family. Brandon would clap me on the back and say, "You are the most generous man in Wisconsin." Caitlin would hug me and whisper, "Dad, we will make this right when we are steady again." They had been steady again for well over a year now, each earning more than I ever managed at my best. And yet they never once brought up moving out. They never mentioned repayment, not even as a joke. The folder also held the receipt from the fancy steakhouse downtown, where I treated them to their anniversary dinner, $200, because Brandon insisted they deserved to celebrate properly. Right after that came the repair bill I had paid when his BMW's transmission failed, $3,000 that wiped out the last of my rainy day fund. "Ray is like a second father to me," Brandon bragged at their summer barbecue, arm draped around my shoulders. Their friends laughed and nodded while I stood there proud as a foolish old rooster, believing I was doing right by them. I went upstairs to the bedroom Ellen and I once shared. I had never changed a thing after she passed. Her jewelry box still sat on the dresser, untouched, and her reading glasses were folded neatly beside the lamp she used every night. I knelt and opened the bottom drawer, the one where I kept our important documents, and pulled out the original deed to our home. My name and Ellen's, dated 1999. No second signatures, no debt. And now, after she was gone, it belonged entirely to me. Standing in that room where her life had slipped away 2 years earlier, surrounded by everything we had built and fought for, I felt something gather inside me. The grief was still sharp, cutting me from the inside, but beneath it, a tougher, colder feeling was forming, a sense of resolve I had not felt in years. My daughter and her husband wanted to shove me aside and cash out the very thing Ellen and I spent decades building. They thought age had softened me. They thought gratitude had made me blind. They thought I was too old, too fragile, too lonely to push back. I looked over at Ellen's picture on the nightstand, her quiet smile frozen in time. I heard her warning all over again. Do not give her so much that she forgets to be grateful. Well, Ellen, our daughter, has forgotten, but she is about to remember. I walked down the hall into my small home office and opened my desk drawer. There, tucked behind a stack of envelopes, sat the business card I kept for 3 years. Todd Fisher, real estate attorney. Ellen had insisted we meet him after her diagnosis. Just in case, now I understood why. The next morning, I moved through my house like someone walking through an exhibit, studying it the way an outsider would, not as a home, but as an asset, as value, as leverage, exactly the way Caitlin and Brandon now saw it. In the kitchen, I let my hand glide across the cool granite countertop I had installed myself. I had put it in after long work days, working by the glow of a clamp light because hiring help was out of the question back then. Ellen had been the one who picked out the countertop pattern, soft gray stone traced with thin gold lines that glimmered whenever the morning sun hit just right. She brewed coffee on that very counter nearly every day for 16 years, right up until the cancer drained her strength and slowed her mornings. Standing there now, I remembered a Christmas long ago when 3-year-old Caitlin took her very first shaky steps across this floor, toddling from the refrigerator to Ellen's open arms. I could still see Ellen scooping her up, laughing and crying at the same time, while I stumbled around for the old camcorder. "Our little girl is walking in her home," she whispered, cheeks wet with joy. "In the house we built for her." Those words lived inside me like a carved inscription. The living room carried 25 years' worth of Christmas mornings. Even now, I could picture 7-year-old Caitlin's face glowing with wonder when she saw the dollhouse I spent 3 months building in the garage, secretly hammering and sanding after she fell asleep each night. Ellen made tiny curtains and crafted miniature furniture out of cardboard and leftover fabric scraps. "Daddy, it looks just like our house," she squealed that morning, and she was right. I had measured every detail so it matched, right down to the little bay window representing her bedroom. That bay window had cost me half a year of overtime. Ellen had pointed it out in some home magazine and said she dreamed of curling up there to read in the afternoons. I spent night after night learning to cut angles I had never cut before, crawling around the lumber with aching knees. But I made it happen. "Ray, we cannot afford this," Ellen warned the night she caught me sketching measurements on the wall. "You want it, you will have it," I told her. "I will make it work." Upstairs, I stepped into Caitlin's old room, still covered in the soft yellow paint she picked for her 16th birthday. Her bulletin board still held snapshots of high school friends, college events, and little inside jokes written on faded scraps of paper. This was the room where I rocked her through colicky nights, where Ellen and I helped her unravel algebra problems at the small white desk I built to fit perfectly beneath the window. But the master bedroom, that was the room that hurt the most. Ellen's side of the bed still had her glass of water on the nightstand. Her bookmark still held place at page 247 in a novel she would never get to finish. I opened the walk-in closets I had custom built to match her height, remembering how proud I had been to get the shelving just right. Her clothes still hung there, carrying the soft, fading trace of her favorite perfume. This room held our plans, our future, and it was the place where she slipped away, holding my hand while hospital machines beeped around us. "Promise me you will not let anyone take advantage of you," she whispered near the end. "You give too much, Ray. Promise you will look out for yourself." I promised her. But looking around that room now, I realized I had broken that promise again and again. In the office, I pulled out a thick folder Ellen had put together, photographs from when we first built the house back in 1999. There I was in the early pictures. 25 years younger, 50 pounds stronger, laying the foundation with my crew, framing walls, hauling lumber, smiling beside Ellen while she wore a hard hat and brought us lemonade on hot afternoons, her belly just beginning to show with our daughter. The financial paperwork from those years told an even harsher story. A second mortgage, a personal loan from my brother, Ellen picking up extra hours at the district office to help pay for materials. We ate beans and rice for months, drove beat-up cars repaired with duct tape and hope. But every sacrifice held meaning. We were building a home for our family, shaping a future we believed in with our own hands. And now, the child who took her first steps in this kitchen, the girl who played in the backyard I landscaped by hand, wanted to cash out every inch of it and tuck me away like some outdated piece of furniture. I picked up Todd Fisher's business card from my desk drawer. The corners were worn from being handled so many times, but the phone number was still crisp. Caitlin and Brandon thought they were up against a confused old man who would accept whatever decision they made for him. They thought all it would take was a gentle push for me to hand over my life's work. They were wrong. Completely wrong. I dialed Todd's number. I listened to the rings, my hands steady as stone. Outside, spring sunlight stretched across the yard. The kind of bright blue morning Ellen always said felt like a fresh start. The next day, I arrived at Fisher & Associates on the second floor of a modest red brick building off Maple Avenue. It was the kind of office real people went to, folks with regular problems and families just trying to sort their lives out. I wore my best suit, the charcoal gray one Ellen picked for her funeral. I got there 15 minutes early and signed in, ignoring the slight tremble in my fingers. When Todd stepped out of his office to greet me, I realized he was younger than I remembered, maybe mid-50s, with silver threading through his hair and the calm, steady presence of someone who had already heard every kind of family disaster at least twice. Todd's office looked like the kind of space Ellen would have approved of, lined floor to ceiling with well-used law books, framed certificates, and family photos showing a wife, 2 teenagers, and a golden retriever sprawled across a backyard lawn. A simple, decent life, the sort of life Ellen and I worked ourselves raw trying to build. "Mr. Harlan, good to see you again." Todd greeted me with a firm handshake and poured 2 cups of coffee from the machine in the corner. The rich scent drifted into the quiet room, cutting through the smell of paper and old legal files. "I remember you and Ellen from a few years back," he said gently. "I was very sorry to hear about her passing." "Thank you," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I need your help with something sensitive. It concerns my daughter and her husband." He sat down, pen poised over a legal pad. "Go ahead, I am listening." So I told him everything. The open phone line, the conversation they never meant me to hear, their plan to sell my home and tuck me away in a care facility like a broken appliance. Todd's expression remained professional, but I saw the way he shook his head when I described how excited they were about using the proceeds to fund their perfect new life in Boulder. "Unfortunately, Mr. Harlan," he said, folding his hands, "this is far more common than people realize. Adult children have a tendency to assume authority over aging parents, especially when substantial property comes into play. But legally," I asked, leaning forward, "there is nothing they can actually do, right?" "Let us establish the obvious first," he said. "Your house transferred fully into your name after your wife passed?" "Yes, Ellen and I held it jointly, but when she died, it became mine alone." "Then your daughter and son-in-law have zero legal claim to it," he explained. "They cannot sell it, force you to move, restrict your access to your own home, or handle your assets without your consent. Not a single thing." He pulled out a fresh notepad and began jotting details. "Your home is 100% yours, period." Relief washed through me, relief quickly followed by something sharper and much colder. "So," I asked carefully, "if I wanted to sell it myself?" "You could list it this afternoon if you wished," Todd said. "It is entirely your decision." He paused, giving me a measured look. "May I ask why you were considering that option?" I thought about the laughter in Caitlin's voice when she called me a burden, about Brandon coolly calculating how much my life and home were worth on the open market, about 25 years of sacrifice being reduced to nothing more than a business opportunity. "They think I'm slipping," I said quietly. "They think they can treat me like an asset that needs to be managed." My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "But they are wrong, and I am ready to show them just how wrong." Todd studied me for a moment, then nodded once. The market in your area is incredibly strong right now. Houses in your neighborhood are selling almost instantly. Cash offers, investors, bidding wars. If you were serious about moving quickly, especially before they return from this trip, how fast are we talking? With an aggressive buyer, he said, we could finalize everything inside a week, maybe even faster. He leaned forward slightly. But I want to be clear. This is a major decision. Once you sell, there is no undoing it. I met his eyes. I built that house with these hands. I know exactly what it represents, and I know exactly what I am doing. For the next hour, we went step by step through the practical pieces: market evaluations, cash buyer strategies, legal filings, timelines. Todd explained that he could prepare the necessary documents within 24 hours if I chose to proceed. The consultation today is $200, he said, as our meeting wrapped up. If we move forward, it will be applied to my legal fees for the sale. I paid in cash, the billfold suddenly feeling lighter in my pocket, but my head clearer than it had felt in years. Outside, sunlight poured across the parking lot as I walked toward my truck. My phone buzzed. Caitlin's name filled the screen, and for the first time since hearing her betray me, I smiled. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I imagined her standing in some polished hotel lobby in Phoenix, checking her watch, wondering why her supposedly confused old father was not racing to answer her call. Let her wonder. Let them keep building their plans on the idea that I was too fragile to fight back. They were in for a shock. The phone was still ringing when I climbed into the driver's seat. Todd's card rested safely in my wallet, and a new plan was taking shape. One that would teach my ungrateful daughter exactly who she was dealing with. I had rebuilt my life once already, from absolutely nothing. Doing it again on my own terms did not scare me. The call finally cut off. I was certain she would call again. She always did when she needed something from the old man, but this time she was going to receive far more than she bargained for. By the time I turned into my neighborhood, the shaking in my hands had disappeared. Todd's words echoed in my mind. It is your property, your decision. 25 years of self-doubt lifted off me like fog burning away under a Wisconsin sunrise. I was slipping my key into the front door when the phone rang again. Through the window, I could see my phone buzzing across the kitchen counter where I had left it earlier. Caitlin's name flashed on the screen. For the first time since hearing her betray me, a slow smile spread across my face. Let her sit with that uncertainty for a moment. Let her wonder why her dependable, overly grateful father was not tripping over himself to answer. I poured a glass of water, took a steady breath, and picked up on the 6th ring. "Dad, there you are," she said, her voice sugary sweet, in a way I now recognized as pure performance. "I was starting to get worried when you didn't answer earlier." "Sorry, sweetheart. I was out running a few errands," I replied, keeping my tone warm, calm, almost cheerful. "How is Phoenix treating you two?" "Oh, you know how conferences are," she said lightly. "But listen, I have some wonderful news." She paused. Caitlin loved a dramatic pause. "Jeremy and I have been planning something very special for you." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles whitened. "Oh, we want to treat you to a vacation," she said. "You deserve some rest after everything you have been through since Mom passed." Her voice dripped with soft sympathy, the kind designed to push someone into agreement. "We found this beautiful place," she continued. "Kind of like a resort, but with medical staff available anytime you might need them." A resort with medical staff. My jaw locked so hard I felt pressure in my temples. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart," I said gently. "You really did not need to go to such trouble on my account." "Nonsense. You are family," she replied. In the background, I heard Brandon's voice cut in. They must have had me on speakerphone. "We already handled all the arrangements," he added. I forced my breathing to stay even. "And when were you thinking of having me go?" "Well," Caitlin said, "we fly back next Friday. We were hoping you could be ready by then. Just pack clothes and personal items. You know, the essentials. The essentials. Not Ellen's photo albums, not the handcrafted furniture I had built over decades. Just whatever an old man should bring when he is quietly removed from his own life." "I see," I said. "Actually, Caitlin, I have a surprise for you as well when you come home." "Oh, Dad, what kind of surprise?" she asked eagerly. In her mind, she probably thought I had finally signed something something that made their lives easier. I walked to the bay window I had built for Ellen all those years ago and looked out at the garden she planted by hand. The porch swing, where we mapped out our future, still creaked softly in the breeze. "It is something I have been working on since our last talk," I said. "I think you both are going to be very surprised." "Oh, you are so sweet, Dad," she said. "We will discuss everything when we get home. Just relax, okay? We will take care of the rest." Sweet. She was calling me sweet while planning to erase my life piece by piece. "I will, sweetheart," I replied. "I love you." "Love you too, Dad. See you Friday." When the line clicked silent, I set the phone down with steadier hands than I had felt in years. I went straight to my home office, opened my laptop, and watched the screen glow awake. For the first time in a long while, it felt like possibility, actual, tangible possibility, stared back at me. I typed, "Real estate agents Denver search results loaded like ammunition." I had always been methodical. 25 years in structural engineering taught me to research before acting. Tonight, those instincts turned into something sharper, something strategic. I scrolled through agent profiles, inspecting sales figures the way I used to compare steel suppliers. Highlands Ranch, Cherry Hills, University Park. Neighborhoods where homes sold for the kind of money Caitlin and Brandon were already spending in their fantasies. One name kept resurfacing. Brian Connor, age 43. Specialist in quick sales. Average of 18 days from listing to closing. His photo showed a confident, professional smile, the kind of man who turned plans into results. His testimonials read like a blueprint for exactly what I needed. Brian sold our house in 6 days. Cash buyer within 48 hours. Closing was seamless. Beneath his credentials was a direct phone number, bold and unmistakable. This was the moment. Once I made this call, there would be no returning to the obedient, manageable parent my daughter thought she had molded. I glanced at Ellen's picture on the desk. I could almost hear her soft voice. "Ray, are you absolutely sure?" I was sure, more sure than I had been about anything since the day we buried her. I dialed Brian Connor's number. My fingers did not shake. "Brian Connor, Connor Real Estate," he said. "How can I help you today?" "Mr. Connor," I began, "my name is Raymond Harlan. I am interested in selling my home, and I need the sale to happen quickly. How fast do these kinds of things actually move?" "Well, Mr. Harlan," he said, "it depends on several factors, but with the right property and a strong pricing strategy, I have closed deals in as little as 10 days when the buyer is paying cash," Brian continued. "What kind of timeline are you hoping for?" 10 days. My heart thumped hard in my chest. "Things can really move that fast?" "Absolutely," he said without hesitation. "The Denver market is on fire, especially for homes in stable, established neighborhoods. Tell me a little about your property." I glanced around the kitchen, suddenly trying to see it the way a buyer would. It is a 2-story place, about 3,400 square feet, built in 1999, located in the Cherry Creek area. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. I have kept it in excellent condition over the years, did most of the work myself. Brian's tone sharpened with interest. "That is exactly the kind of listing several of my investors are looking for. Original owner, well-maintained, strong location. Those are premium factors." He paused. "Would you be open to a property assessment? When could you meet?" "I can be there today," I replied. 3 o'clock work for you?" "Perfect. Let me give you the address." When I hung up, silence filled the kitchen as if the whole house were holding its breath. The weight of what I had just set in motion pressed tight against my ribs. In 3 hours, a stranger would walk through the home Ellen and I built from sweat and sacrifice, and he would assign it a price tag, a value, a number. I spent the next couple of hours cleaning compulsively, Ellen's voice still echoing from the past about how a home should always look ready for company. I wiped the bay window, straightened throw pillows, polished every surface until it nearly shone. But this time, it did not feel like tidying for guests. It felt like preparing for an execution. At exactly 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my shirt, inhaled deeply, and caught the faint scent of Ellen's old lavender sachets drifting from the linen closet. My hand trembled slightly as I wrapped it around the brass doorknob I had installed more than 15 years earlier. This door was no longer an entrance. It was a threshold to whatever came next. I opened it. Brian Connor looked almost identical to his online profile. early 40s, sharp but friendly, carrying a leather portfolio and a tablet. The moment he stepped inside, his eyebrows lifted in appreciation. "Wow," he murmured. He stood just inside the entryway, taking in the crown molding I had carved by hand, the hardwood floors Ellen and I meticulously selected, the flow of the house that took years of weekend work to perfect. "Mr. Harlan, this is exactly what I was hoping to see." He moved slowly, absorbing every detail. Sunlight poured through the bay window Ellen had insisted on, bathing the living room in warm, golden light. Brian walked toward the dining room and admired how it connected seamlessly to the kitchen, a connection I had achieved by removing a load-bearing wall and installing a custom beam. "You really were not exaggerating about maintenance," he said as he took photos. "These hardwood floors, original? I installed them myself in 2001, 3/4-inch solid oak. Ellen wanted something that would last longer than we would." His appreciation seemed genuine, rooted in professional respect. "And this kitchen?" He ran his hand along the granite countertop, his eyes widening. "Custom? Every inch of it." Ellen picked the stone. She said the gold veining reminded her of sunlight breaking through clouds. My throat tightened slightly. "Took me 3 weekends to get the install perfect." Brian continued through the space, photographing my custom cabinetry, checking outlets, testing water pressure, all with the practiced eye of someone who knew what buyers demanded. "Mr. Harlan," he said, pausing, "I mean this sincerely. I have been doing this 15 years, and I rarely see a home maintained with this level of care. I spent my career as an engineer," I told him quietly. "I believe in building things to last." "It shows," he said. He gestured toward the living room. "Mind if I look in here?" I nodded and followed. He admired the open layout, the built-in shelves flanking the fireplace, the gently worn reading chair where Ellen spent so many afternoons. At the bay window, he whistled softly. "You built this yourself?" "I did. Ellen wanted a place to read in the afternoons." I could almost see her there still, glasses halfway down her nose, mystery novel in her lap, a cup of tea cooling on the sill. Brian began measuring the window frame, excitement growing in his voice. "Mr. Harlan, you need to see these comps." He pulled up a list of recent sales on his tablet. "Houses with your size, condition, and location have been closing between $850,000 and $920,000. My chest tightened. That was more than Caitlin and Brandon had predicted in their little whispered scheme. "But," Brian continued, "considering the custom features and meticulous upkeep, I would recommend listing at $890,000. That should attract serious buyers quickly while still maximizing your return." $890,000! I sank into Ellen's old reading chair, the number swirling in my mind. "You really think it will sell for that?" He smiled confidently. "Mr. Harlan, you are sitting on a gold mine." "Properties like yours do not hit the market very often," Brian said, confidence in every word, "especially not in this kind of condition." His tone carried the easy assurance of a man who knew his numbers and knew he had just found a prize. "I actually work with an investment group," he added, "and your home checks every box for what they specialize in." "What kind of group?" I asked carefully. "They focus on high-quality rental properties in established neighborhoods. They buy in cash. No financing delays, no haggling over repairs, no waiting on appraisals. They can close in 10 business days. 10 business days. Caitlin and Brandon were due back from Phoenix in 8. They fully expected to walk through my door and find me neatly packed for the resort they had chosen. "What is the catch?" I asked. "Why move so quickly?" Brian chuckled softly. "There is no catch. Cash buyers skip the bank entirely. No loan approvals that drag on for weeks. No last-minute appraisal problems. They do their own evaluation. But honestly, your home is in better condition than half the new builds I tour." I looked around the living room, the same room where Caitlin had taken her first steps, where Ellen and I hosted Christmas mornings, birthday dinners, and quiet weekends with the newspaper spread across our laps. Every inch of it held a story. "And how soon?" I asked. "Would I need to be out of the house?" "Standard contract gives you 30 days after closing," Brian replied. "And this group is flexible. They care more about securing the property than rushing you." My mind flashed back to Caitlin's syrupy voice calling me sweet, even as she planned to strip my life down to the essentials. I thought about Brandon reducing me to a burden on a balance sheet, and I heard Ellen's old warning, about the danger of giving too much, trusting too much. "Let's proceed," I said sharply. For a moment, Brian's polished professionalism cracked into honest excitement. "Excellent decision, Mr. Harlan. I will contact them right now." I watched him step aside and make the call, listened as he described my home with the enthusiasm of someone who had stumbled onto a rare artifact. Cherry Creek area, original owner, immaculate condition, custom features throughout. When he ended the call, he was smiling. "They want to move immediately. I can have contracts ready for you tomorrow morning." The sun was sinking beneath the edge of Ellen's bay window, casting a golden wash across the room. The same room where I had just agreed to dismantle 25 years of our life. Yet, instead of grief, a strange calm began settling through me. Control. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control. "How does 9 o'clock sound?" Brian asked. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Ellen's 15th anniversary gift, ticked steadily in the quiet. 9 o'clock is perfect. After Brian left, the house felt oddly still. It would not be mine for much longer. The warm evening light painted everything gold, like a photograph of a past I was preparing to walk away from. But instead of sorrow, a steady anticipation pulsed in my chest. The next morning, Brian returned, this time with a notary, a stack of documents, and coffee for all of us. His efficiency was something I respected immediately. He laid the paperwork across the dining table, and I read every line as if checking a structural blueprint. Sale price: $890,000 cash purchase. Closing: 10 business days. The notary, a patient woman with soft eyes, guided me through each signature. The contingencies were minimal, just a title search and a final walkthrough. "And I can stay in the house for 30 days after closing if needed?" I asked. "That is correct, Mr. Harlan," she said, although many sellers prefer to move out sooner for their own peace of mind. "Peace of mind," I murmured, almost amused. The only peace of mind I wanted was the moment I saw my daughter's face when she discovered what I had done. I signed my name, steady, deliberate, and just like that, the wheels began turning. The first 3 days disappeared into a blur of inspections and paperwork. The title company combed through 25 years of records. The investors sent a small team, a respectful crew who admired my craftsmanship and found nothing needing repair. "Your father-in-law really knew his stuff," one of them said, assuming I was merely overseeing the house for younger relatives. "The flooring, the electrical work, it is all excellent." Days 4 through 6, I turned into a man with a mission. I researched apartments online, looking for something modest but comfortable, a place to rebuild quietly with nearly $900,000 backing me. I found a community in Highlands, one of those active adult neighborhoods with a golf course, walking trails, and a recreation center. The kind of place Ellen and I used to talk about when imagining retirement together. I also began calling storage facilities, planning which of Ellen's things I would keep, her china set, her jewelry box, the photo albums, and which items would have to be left behind. The essentials of a life we lived together. Days 7 through 9 brought a strange, almost unfamiliar confidence. Something I had not felt in years. Each morning, I woke with a sharper mind and a steadier purpose. Every sunrise meant I was one step closer to freedom, one step closer to showing my daughter that her so-called confused old father still had a spine made of steel. Mrs. Patterson from next door noticed the inspectors and the parade of official-looking people coming and going. She asked if everything was all right. "Just having some work done," I told her. It was only a half-truth, but the full truth, the real truth, would spread across the neighborhood like wildfire long before I wanted anyone whispering about it. On the evening of day 8, Brian called. "Everything is set for tomorrow, Mr. Harlan," he said. "The buyers are thrilled with the inspection. Funds will be wired immediately upon closing. You will have access to them the same day." That night, I packed a small suitcase with clothes and essentials, not because I was leaving yet, but because I wanted to be ready for whatever came next. I stood at Ellen's dresser and picked up her framed photo. "I hope you understand," I whispered. "I hope you see why I have to do this." Friday morning arrived bright and crisp. The exact kind of spring day Ellen used to claim showed Denver at its very best. I dressed in the navy suit she bought me for Caitlin's college graduation, the suit that once made her tear up with pride. The title company office radiated efficiency the moment I stepped inside. Papers shuffled, printers hummed, and everyone moved with purpose. The buyers had sent their attorney, a sharp woman in a gray blazer, who inspected each document as if she were carving it from stone. Brian guided the process with the ease of a seasoned conductor. "Mr. Harlan, sign here, and initial there." Each signature felt like snapping a chain, one link at a time. The deed transfer, the settlement statement, the acknowledgement that 1247 Maple Street no longer belonged to me. "And here is your wire confirmation," the attorney said. $890,000, less closing costs, has been deposited into your account. I stared at the printed numbers. More money than I had ever seen in one place. More money than Caitlin and Brandon ever imagined their burden was worth. Everyone shook my hand, pleased with how smoothly the transaction had gone. Brian walked me out to my truck. "You made a strong choice today," he said. "A fresh start can be exactly what a person needs." I drove through the neighborhoods I had known for 25 years, past the elementary school where Caitlin learned to read, past the park where Ellen and I walked on Sunday mornings. But nostalgia did not hit me the way I expected. What I felt was liberation. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the truck for a long moment, staring at the house that was no longer mine. The keys in my hand felt strangely heavy, but tomorrow I would hand them over and close this chapter for good. Caitlin and Brandon were due back from Phoenix in 3 days. They expected to walk into a cozy home, find their compliant father neatly packed, ready to be transported to their resort. Instead, they were going to come home to an empty house and a lesson they would remember for the rest of their lives. I climbed out of the truck and unlocked the front door, phone already in my hand, for the next step of a plan that was unfolding more perfectly than I had dared hope. But once inside, I hesitated. The engine ticked as it cooled in the driveway. I stood looking around the house I had built with my own hands, the house that now belonged to strangers, the house my daughter assumed she would inherit once I was tucked away out of sight. New owners or not, I still had legal access for 30 days, plenty of time to finish what I had begun. I got back into the truck and drove to a Starbucks on Colfax Avenue, parking in the lot. My hands were steady as I dialed directory assistance to locate a 24-hour locksmith. The emergency fee was $200, but money no longer dictated my choices. "AAA emergency locksmith, Eddie speaking. I need all the locks on my home changed today," I said. "It's urgent." "What kind of time frame are we talking, sir?" "As soon as possible. I'll pay cash." "I can be there in 2 hours. What's the address?" Back at the house, I waited for Eddie inside my truck, watching Mrs. Patterson water her garden. She waved. I waved back, a tightness in my chest reminding me that I was lying to people who genuinely cared about me. But the truth needed to wait. 2 hours later, a white van rolled up, tools, parts, and hardware filling the back. Eddie stepped out, a man in his 50s with the look of someone who had seen every kind of home emergency Denver could throw at him. "Having a security issue?" he asked, examining the front door. "New ownership situation," I replied. "Thought it best to be proactive." He nodded knowingly and got to work. I watched him remove the locks I had installed 15 years earlier, the brass set Ellen chose because it matched the door knocker she loved. "These are good locks," Eddie said as he unscrewed the last piece. "Whoever put these in knew exactly what they were doing." "That was me," I said quietly. "I believe in doing things right." The new locks Eddie installed were silver, sleek, modern, nothing like the warm brass ones Ellen had picked out years ago. When he tested them, the sound was sharper, more mechanical than the gentle click I had grown used to. "Here are your new keys, sir. 3 copies for each lock, front door, back door, and the garage side entrance." He handed me a ring of keys that felt strange and unfamiliar in my hand, as if they belonged to someone else entirely. "That will be $450 with the emergency fee," he said. I paid him cash, clean, simple, anonymous, and watched his van disappear down Maple Street. No receipts, no credit card trail. Nothing to connect Raymond Harlan to that transaction. Once the house was quiet again, I stepped inside and began the hardest task, packing 25 years of a life into what I could actually carry. Ellen's jewelry box went into my suitcase first, the carved wooden one she loved so much. Then our wedding photos, the novel she was reading when she passed, still stuck at page 247. My engineering licenses and awards, our important papers. Ellen's old cookbook with her neat handwriting curling through every margin. Most everything else stayed behind. The furniture that told the story of our life together. the photo albums documenting Caitlin's childhood, Ellen's clothes hanging in our closet, still holding the faint scent of her perfume. As I packed, it felt like choosing which pieces of my heart I could afford to take with me. When I finished, I called Sunset Crest Apartments, a senior-friendly complex I had found the night before. "I need a furnished one-bedroom immediately," I explained. "We have a lovely unit open for move-in today," said Mrs. Chen, the property manager. "Month to month is fine if you need flexibility." "I will take it." I met her an hour later. The building was modest but spotless, with a small community center, tidy landscaping, and a quiet that felt more like a waiting room than a home. The unit itself was basic, clean, furnished, and neutral, a place meant for temporary living, not building memories. "Cash deposit is perfectly acceptable, Mr. Harlan," Mrs. Chen said. "When would you like to move in?" "Tonight." She raised an eyebrow at the urgency, but did not ask questions. I signed the lease and handed her nearly $3,000, an amount that would have choked me 2 weeks earlier. Now it felt like paying for oxygen. Loading my car as the dust settled in, I caught sight of Mrs. Patterson watching from her window. She waved. I waved back, feeling the weight of every connection I was cutting, every person I was leaving behind because my own daughter had left me no other choice. Before driving off, I walked through the house one last time. My footsteps echoed differently now, hollow, final. In the kitchen, where Ellen taught Caitlin to roll Christmas cookie dough. In the living room, where our daughter tore open gifts every year. In the bedroom, where Ellen slipped from this world while I held her hand. "I'm sorry, honey," I whispered to her memory. "But you would understand. You always told me I was too generous for my own good." I locked the new locks, my new locks, and drove away from Maple Street, the rear-view mirror filled with the life I was choosing to leave behind. Sunset Crest greeted me with the glow of motion sensor lights. I carried my suitcase inside and fumbled with another unfamiliar lock, stepping into my new home for the first time. It felt like a hotel, functional, faceless, already forgotten. I set my suitcase down and reached for my phone. One more call, one more step in the plan that would knock the breath out of Caitlin and Brandon. I opened my laptop on the little dining table and searched for banks with strong private account protections. Colorado Community Bank stood out immediately, small, discreet, and known for personal service. I dialed. "Colorado Community Bank, Private Banking Division. This is David Morrison." "Mr. Morrison," I said, "my name is Raymond Harlan. I need to open an account for a substantial deposit, approximately $890,000. A brief silence followed, the kind that told me he had just rewritten the rest of his day. "We would be very pleased to assist you, Mr. Harlan. When would be convenient?" "Monday morning, 9 o'clock. "Perfect. I will have everything prepared." When the call ended, the weekend stretched out before me, quiet, unfamiliar, strangely hollow. This would be my first weekend in a place that had never heard Ellen's laugh, never seen our daughter growing up, never held a memory of our life. Saturday morning, I brewed coffee in the tiny kitchenette, the sound of the unfamiliar coffee maker echoing in a space that didn't yet belong to me. I unpacked methodically, Ellen's jewelry box on the dresser, my engineering certifications on the bookshelf, our wedding photo next to the bed where I would now sleep alone. Then I drove to the grocery store and shopped for a single person. I bought only simple groceries, nothing elaborate, nothing that required the kind of cooking Ellen used to love. At the checkout, the young man scanning my items gave me a small, friendly smile. "New around here?" he asked. "Just moved in," I told him, starting over. Monday morning came faster than I expected. Over the weekend, I found a quiet coffee shop called Brews and Views just a few blocks from my apartment. The barista, a young woman named Sarah with streaks of purple running through her hair, made strong coffee that reminded me of the kind I used to brew for long nights at job sites. "You're not from around here," she said, not nosy, just observant. "Retired engineer," I replied, "looking for something quieter these days." "Well, you picked the right corner of Denver," she said with a grin. "Most of the folks here take life one slow day at a time." I sat at a window table with my coffee and watched families walk strollers, old neighbors chat on porches, dogs tug their owners toward the park. It was the kind of Saturday morning Ellen once treasured. Instead of feeling hollow, I felt something new humming inside me, anticipation. On Monday, I put on my best suit and drove to Colorado Community Bank for my appointment. David Morrison greeted me in the lobby, mid-40s, neatly dressed, with an easy professional warmth. "Mr. Harlan, welcome. What brings you to Colorado Community Bank?" "I recently sold my home," I said. "I need a bank that values relationships, not just transaction fees." David nodded with understanding. "That is our specialty. Tell me what you're looking for." I explained carefully. A widower who had sold the family house, needing safe, private banking for a large sum. David asked thoughtful questions, never intrusive, just enough to understand the logistics. "I'll need to wire the sale proceeds from my old bank," I told him. "No problem," he said. "We can begin the transfer today. The funds should clear by Wednesday." He worked through the paperwork with a quiet efficiency that reminded me of myself in my engineering days. Premium account security, debit card, checkbook, online banking, safeguards for large balances. A few signatures later, I became customer DAR847293 with access to nearly $900,000 that Caitlin and Brandon would never control. Tuesday and Wednesday unfolded in an oddly peaceful rhythm. Coffee at Brews and Views, Sarah remembering my order. Afternoon walks around the neighborhood, discovering a little park where retirees fed pigeons, read newspapers, and chatted about nothing of consequence. Late Wednesday afternoon, David called. "Mr. Harlan, your funds have cleared. You're fully active." I hung up and looked around my small apartment, at Ellen's photo on the nightstand, at the plain walls, at the simple routine taking shape around me. For the first time since she passed, my life felt like something I was directing instead of merely surviving. That evening, I sat in the single chair the apartment came with. Not Ellen's reading chair, not the recliner in the house where I learned the truth about my daughter, just a plain chair in a room with no memories attached. I opened my laptop and typed mini surveillance cameras. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What I was about to order would document the final piece of the lesson Caitlin and Brandon never expected to receive. They returned Friday expecting to find their obedient, confused father ready to be placed into their resort. Instead, they would find proof of what their burden had become, a man they underestimated. Search results filled the screen, bulky security cameras, tiny disguised ones, models shaped like pens, clocks, speakers. After a half hour of methodical comparisons, I found exactly what I needed. A wireless micro camera concealed inside a phone charging block. Engineering-grade features that appealed to me immediately. Wi-Fi enabled with remote access, motion-triggered recording, 12-hour battery life, high-definition clarity, real-time streaming to my phone from anywhere perfect. I paid the extra $40 for guaranteed Thursday delivery. The total, $149, barely registered. 2 weeks earlier, that would have felt extravagant. Today, it felt like buying structural steel, a necessary investment in a larger plan. With the camera ordered, I turned to the next critical piece, the note I intended to leave at the house. A message that would greet Caitlin and Brandon when they realized their keys no longer opened the front door. Draft 1 was too furious, burning with the raw pain of their betrayal. Draft 2 was so cold, it felt impersonal. By the third attempt, I found the balance, measured, dignified, unmistakably final. I wrote in the careful, steady handwriting Ellen used to admire. "Dear Caitlin and Brandon, if you're reading this, it means my plan worked exactly as intended. I heard your phone call about putting me into a care facility because I was becoming an inconvenience. I heard you calculating how much money you hope to make selling my home." The pen hovered as I prepared to continue, knowing these words were the first strike in a truth they were not prepared to face. My final draft of the letter read exactly the way I needed it to, measured, undeniable, and impossible for Caitlin or Brandon to twist into something it was not. The house has been sold for $890,000 in cash. The proceeds are secured in my new bank account, and that is where they will stay. I have moved somewhere I am valued, not tolerated. Do not worry about me. Worry about where you plan to live. Your belongings have been packed and placed in storage at Denver Moving and Storage on Colfax Avenue. You have 30 days to retrieve them before fees begin. I gave you 42 years of everything I had. You repaid me by planning to ship me away so you could profit from my life's work. I hope the lesson was worth the price. Love, Dad. Thursday morning, the FedEx driver handed me a small box containing the surveillance equipment I had ordered. I spent nearly an hour at my tiny kitchen table setting it up, testing the camera and learning the app. The image quality was crisp enough to identify a person by the reflection in their eyes. The audio picked up whispered words. It was perfect. That afternoon, I drove to the old house one final time. I still had the garage opener they had never even asked about, so I pulled inside without attracting attention. My hands shook slightly as I stepped through the door, using my new keys. The house still carried that lingering mix of scents that meant home to me: Ellen's lavender sachets, the lemon oil I used on the furniture, and the faint warmth of years of family meals. But there were new intrusions now. Caitlin and Brandon's suitcases piled near the stairs, their mail scattered across the kitchen counter. They had been treating my home like a personal storage unit while plotting to discard me. I plugged the disguise camera charger into the wall outlet beside the entryway, angling it until the live feed on my phone framed the door perfectly. Anyone stepping inside would be captured from head to toe. I walked in and out of frame several times, adjusting the angle until I was satisfied it would record every second of their reaction. Then I taped the envelope to the inside of the front door at eye level, exactly where their eyes would land after the shock settled. Before leaving, I stood in the living room for a long moment. I touched the mantel where Ellen's picture rested for 23 years. Soon, another family would occupy this space, their laughter replacing ours, their memories covering ours like fresh paint. "It's done, sweetheart," I whispered. "Justice finally served." I locked the door with my new key, tested the camera feed from my car, and drove back to my apartment. The motion sensor was armed, the battery fully charged. All that remained was waiting. Back at Sunset Crest, I settled into my chair and kept the app open on my phone. The feed showed the empty doorway of my former home. The timestamp read 6:30 p.m., Thursday. Tomorrow, they would walk straight into the truth. Friday morning came with a clarity I had not felt in years. My coffee tasted almost bold. Even the small apartment felt less like exile and more like command central for the justice I had earned. By 4:30 p.m., they should be close. I knew their patterns like clockwork. Caitlin always insisted on leaving Phoenix at noon to beat traffic. Brandon drove exactly the speed limit, never faster. They would pull into my old driveway within the hour. I looked at Ellen's photo on the nightstand. "I hope you understand why I am doing this," I said softly. They gave me no other choice. At 5:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. A black SUV eased into the driveway, Brandon's car. My heart thudded as I watched them on the feed. Caitlin stepped out first, stretching like someone returning from vacation without a care in the world. Brandon climbed out next and pulled their suitcases from the trunk. They walked toward the front door, with the easy confidence of people arriving to claim property they believe belonged to them. I watched Caitlin dig her keys out of her purse. She slid the familiar brass key into the lock. It didn't turn. She frowned, jiggled it, tried again, then stared at the key ring as if it had betrayed her. "That's weird," she muttered. Her voice came through my phone speaker sharp and clear. "My key isn't working." Brandon stepped closer, concern replacing his usual smug calm. "Let me check the back door." He disappeared around the side of the house while Caitlin kept wrestling with the lock, frustration creeping into her voice. When he returned a few minutes later, his expression had shifted from annoyance to alarm. "The back door's locked tight, and the garage remote isn't responding," he said. "Caitlin, someone changed the locks." "What? That's impossible. Dad doesn't even know any locksmiths." I smiled, the first honest, satisfied smile I had felt in years. Jeremy leaned toward the front door, examining the lock like a man who had finally recognized the shape of his own downfall. "These locks are brand new," he muttered, the confidence draining from his voice. "This is not a mistake." Caitlin fumbled in her purse, hands shaking. "I am calling Dad." I watched her through the live feed as she dialed my old landline, the same number I had disconnected 3 days earlier. She let it ring and ring until confusion overtook her features. "He is not answering," she said. "It is not even going to voicemail." "Try his cell phone," Jeremy snapped. "He does not have a cell phone, remember? We talked about getting him one for emergencies." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, genuine fear crept in. Jeremy moved from window to window, like a man checking fence lines for weaknesses. "There, that one is unlocked. I can boost you." I watched my daughter climb awkwardly through the kitchen window I had deliberately left unlatched. Her business jacket snagged on the frame before she dropped inside. A moment later, the front door swung open from the inside, and Jeremy followed her in with the suitcases. Both of them froze the moment they saw the white envelope taped neatly at eye level. Caitlin's hand shook as she pulled it down. My handwriting, her name paired with Brandon's, stared back at her. She tore it open, and I leaned closer to my phone, watching every shift in their expressions. Her eyes raced across my words. Brandon read over her shoulder. Confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally, horror. "He sold the house?" she shrieked. "How could he do this to us?" Brandon grabbed the note from her hand and scanned it again, as if hoping the message had magically rewritten itself. "That old man played us. He played us the whole time. $890,000, Caitlin said, sobbing now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "He kept all of it. That was supposed to be our future." "Your future," Brandon snapped. His carefully maintained facade cracked wide open. "He is your father. You should have handled him better." "My fault?" She spun toward him, resentment boiling over. "You were the one who said he was becoming a burden. You're the one who pushed the nursing home." "Well, he was a burden," Brandon shot back. "Look where that got us. We are homeless, Caitlin. Our lease is up next week." The irony was almost poetic. They were arguing about homelessness in the very living room where they had planned to make me homeless. "Call a lawyer," Caitlin insisted through tears. "There has to be something we can do. He cannot just sell the house without telling us." "With what money?" Brandon barked. "In case you forgot, I lost my job 6 months ago, and your marketing salary barely covers the car payments." "Then get another job," he laughed bitterly. "Sure, I am positive firms are lining up to hire advisors who were fired for questionable transactions." The color drained from her face as the truth settled in. No inheritance, no home, no savings, no stability, and a husband who had just revealed more than she ever expected. "How could he be so cruel?" she whispered. "The same way you were," Brandon said coldly. "You called him a burden. You planned to stash him away. Turns out the old man was smarter than both of us." Through my phone, I watched them slump onto the furniture, my furniture, for the last time. Caitlin buried her face in her palms while Brandon stared at my letter like it was a personal indictment. I turned off the camera feed. I had seen enough. In my small kitchen, I opened the bottle of Ellen's favorite wine, the 2018 Bordeaux we had saved for an occasion that never came. I poured a glass, lifted it toward her photo, and whispered, "To us, Ellen, justice delivered." The wine tasted exactly like victory. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, almost certainly Caitlin trying to reach me from another device. I deleted it without opening it and powered the phone off completely. I stood at my apartment window and looked out over the Denver skyline, glowing gold in the last light of day. Somewhere across the city, my daughter and her husband were sitting in a house that no longer belonged to them, learning the cost of greed and cruelty the hard way. For the first time since Ellen died, I felt unburdened. I felt whole. I felt free. I was no one's obligation. I was a man with choices, with means, and with a future entirely of my own making. Raymond Harlan had walked out of their lives, and he was not coming back.